The office was too quiet. Elena Voss could hear the clock on the wall, the soft hiss of the fireplace, and her own heartbeat, steady and slow. Across the wide wooden desk sat Damon Blackwood, the Alpha King, a man everyone in the territory feared and admired. Today he was not looking at her as a wife. He was looking at her as a problem he wanted solved. "Sign here," he said, sliding the paper toward her. His voice was calm, almost bored, as if he were closing a business deal instead of ending a marriage. Elena picked up the pen. Her hand did not shake. She had promised herself it would not shake, no matter what happened in this room. She thought about the 2 years behind her, the wedding that no one wanted, arranged only to stop a war between two rival packs. She thought about the nights she waited for him to come home, and the mornings she ate breakfast alone. She thought about how he always found time for pack meetings, for training warriors, for long conversations with Celine Ashford, the noblewoman his council had chosen for him, but never for her. And yet, she smiled as she signed her name. Damon frowned slightly, confused by that smile. He had expected tears. He had expected her to beg him to change his mind, or at least to argue about the terms. Instead, she looked almost relieved. "That's all," he said, watching her set the pen down. "You may leave whenever you wish. I will make sure you are given a generous amount to start again somewhere else." "I don't need your money," Elena said quietly. "I only need you to keep your promise. No contact, no claim on me, ever." "Agreed," Damon said quickly, glad to be free of this arrangement that had never made sense to him. He did not ask why she wanted no contact. He did not notice the slight change in the way she held herself, the way her hand rested for just a second against her stomach before she turned and walked out of the room. If he had looked closer, if he had cared enough to look closer, he might have noticed the small changes in her that had begun weeks ago. But Damon Blackwood was not a man who looked closely at things he had already decided did not matter. Elena had read the pack laws twice before that meeting. She was careful and clever, and she had planned everything long before Damon called her into his office. According to old pack law, a rejected mate who was already carrying a child could leave the territory freely, without the council's permission, as long as the pregnancy was not yet known. Once she was outside the border, no one could force her back. No one could take her children from her. She had packed her bags 3 days earlier. By the time the sun set that evening, Elena Voss was gone from Blackwood territory, carrying nothing but a suitcase, a little money, and a secret that would change everything. The truth was simple, though it would have surprised anyone who thought they understood the cold marriage between the Alpha King and his rejected wife. 3 months before the signing, there had been one night neither of them spoke about again. Damon had come home from a brutal battle at the border, exhausted and grieving for soldiers he had lost. He had gone to Elena's room, not out of love, but out of a need for comfort that he could not explain, even to himself. For a few hours, the distance between them disappeared. Then morning came, and Damon convinced himself the night meant nothing. He never mentioned it again. He built a wall around it in his mind, and moved on with his plans to marry Celine. Elena did not have the luxury of forgetting so easily. Weeks later, she understood what that night had given her. She never told him. She simply carried the truth quietly, the same way she carried herself through every cold dinner and every distant glance he sent toward another woman. 5 years passed. Elena built a new life in a small town far from Blackwood territory, a place where humans and shifters lived side by side, without packs or politics. She opened a small clinic, using the medical training she had gathered during her years in the pack, and she became known as a kind, steady woman who never asked questions and never judged anyone who walked through her door. At home, she raised 2 children. Kai and Mira were nothing like ordinary 5-year-olds. They were fast, strong, and sharp-eyed, already showing small signs of the wolf blood that ran through their veins, though most shifter children did not show any signs until much later. Elena trained them carefully, teaching them how to control their instincts, how to stay calm, how to blend in. She never told them who their father was. She only told them that their father was not part of their story, and for years, that answer was enough. But some truths cannot stay buried forever. Damon Blackwood's kingdom, once strong and stable, had grown restless. Celine, the noblewoman he married after rejecting Elena, could not carry a child of wolf blood, no matter how many healers she visited, or how many rituals the council tried. Without an heir, whispers of doubt spread through the packs. Alliances grew shaky. Old rivals began circling, sensing weakness they had not dared approach before. The council, desperate for answers, began looking into old records, searching for anything that might explain the missing heir. It was during this search that a tracker, loyal to an older alliance from before Daemon's rule, found something strange. Faint traces of Blackwood bloodline scent had been discovered in a settlement 3 territories away, in records tied to a woman who had once lived among the pack years earlier. The tracker brought his findings to the council quietly, unsure if it meant anything at all. But the council leader, an old friend of Daemon's father, immediately understood the significance. He asked only one question. Could Elena Voss have been carrying a child when she left? No one had an answer, but everyone agreed the possibility could not be ignored. Daemon did not want to believe it at first. He had spent 5 years telling himself that his first marriage was simply a mistake, corrected, a chapter closed cleanly and without consequence. The idea that Elena might have left carrying his child felt impossible, almost insulting to the careful story he had built about that time in his life. Still, doubt has a way of growing quietly until it can no longer be ignored. Daemon found himself lying awake some nights, remembering the way Elena had smiled while signing the rejection papers. At the time, he had thought it was relief. Now, for the first time, he wondered if it had been something else entirely. Determination, a secret, a plan. He traveled to the settlement himself, refusing to send anyone else. Some part of him needed to see the truth with his own eyes. He found the clinic first, a small clean building with a modest sign reading Voss Family Clinic. Through the front window he saw her. Elena, older now, her hair a little shorter, her expression calmer than he remembered, sitting behind a desk speaking gently to an elderly patient. She looked like a woman who had built something solid and good, something that did not need him. Then he saw them. 2 children played in the small yard beside the clinic, chasing each other around a wooden fence. A boy and a girl, maybe 5 years old, both with dark hair and sharp, familiar eyes. The boy tripped and rolled, laughing, and for a brief moment, his eyes flashed gold, the unmistakable sign of a strong wolf spirit, awakening early. Daemon felt the ground shift beneath him. He did not remember walking through the clinic door. He only remembered standing in front of Elena, his voice rough, asking the only question that mattered. Are they mine? Elena did not flinch. She had imagined this moment more times than she could count, and now that it had finally arrived, she felt strangely calm. Yes, she said simply. Kai and Mira, they are yours. The silence between them stretched long and heavy. Outside, the children's laughter continued, unaware that their entire world was about to change. Why didn't you tell me? Daemon asked, his voice caught somewhere between anger and disbelief. Because you didn't want me, Elena said. You wanted Celine. You wanted a life without me in it. I gave you exactly what you asked for. I never lied to you. I simply didn't give you information you never asked me for. You should have told me, he said again, quieter this time. Would it have changed anything? Elena asked. Would you have stayed for me, or only for them? Daemon had no answer, and they both knew it. Over the following weeks, Daemon stayed in the small town, unwilling to leave now that he knew the truth. He watched from a careful distance as Elena continued her life, running her clinic, caring for her patients, raising her children with a steady hand. He tried, clumsily at first, to be part of Kai and Mira's world, but the children were cautious, unsure of the tall stranger who kept appearing at their mother's side. Elena made it clear from the beginning that she would not simply hand her children over to a king who had rejected her, nor would she allow him to walk in and take control simply because of his title. If Daemon wanted a place in their lives, he would have to earn it, slowly, patiently, without expecting anything in return. To his credit, Daemon tried. He learned to sit on the floor and build small towers of wooden blocks with Mira, who quickly discovered she could outbuild him every time. He learned that Kai loved stories about brave warriors, and he began telling him old tales from the pack, careful to leave out anything that Elena felt was too heavy for young ears. Slowly, cautiously, The children began to warm to him, not because he was their father by blood, but because he kept showing up, day after day, without complaint. Word of Daemon's discovery eventually reached the Blackwood Council, and pressure began building for him to bring his heirs home immediately, to secure the future of the kingdom before rivals could use the uncertainty against him. The Daemon refused to rush things. For the first time in his life, he chose his family over his crown's demands, even as council members grew impatient, and Selene, humiliated and furious, filed for her own separation from him. He did not fight her decision. In many ways, it was a relief for both of them, a chance to end a marriage that had never truly worked for either side. Daemon eventually stepped down from his full duties as Alpha King, placing a trusted cousin in charge of daily pack matters, while he focused on rebuilding trust with Elena and slowly earning a place in his children's lives. He rented a small house near the clinic, refusing to pressure Elena into anything she was not ready for. Months passed. Kai and Mira grew comfortable calling him by name, then eventually, on their own terms, chose to call him something closer to father. Elena watched this transformation carefully, still guarded, still unwilling to simply forget the years of coldness that had defined their first marriage. One evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Daemon found Elena sitting on the back porch of her small home, watching the stars. "I'm not asking you to forget what happened," he said, sitting carefully beside her. "I know I don't deserve an easy path back into your life. I just want the chance to build something real, if you're willing to let me try." Elena studied him for a long moment. She thought about the frightened, determined young woman who had signed those rejection papers with a steady hand and a hidden secret. She thought about everything she had built alone and everything she still wanted for her children's future. "If we do this," she finally said, "it will be on my terms. No titles standing between us, no council deciding what our family looks like. Just us, deciding together, as equals." Daemon nodded without hesitation. "Equals," he agreed. A year later, on a quiet afternoon in her clinic office, Elena signed another document, this time with Daemon sitting across from her, watching closely. It was not a rejection this time, but a partnership agreement, carefully written by her own lawyer, protecting her independence, her clinic, and her children's future, no matter what happened between her and Daemon in the years ahead. She signed it smiling, the same steady, unshaken smile she had worn 5 years earlier in a very different office, under very different circumstances. This time, Daemon smiled too, understanding at last what he had almost lost, and grateful beyond words for the second chance he had been given to become the father, and the man his family truly deserved.